Welcome back. That last session we had just before the break on policy, I just wanted to give a plug to a session at 3 o'clock they were going to have with Ann Kelly and Jason Mathers and a couple of others that will be moderated by Aman Singh, who will be a little bit later. So just look for that. But there's lots of good sessions, and I say that because I'm also hosting one at 3 o'clock. So anyway, but go to one of the, if you wanted to get more into the policy arena, go to that. So we're gonna start off with another one great idea. If you talk to scientists, they will tell you that we cannot get to a 2-degree world without figuring out how to conserve nature, how to bring nature into that. And the question for this audience is, how does that become a business activity, a business opportunity? And here to talk about that is the Managing Director for Global Lands at the Nature Conservancy, Justin Adams. Justin? Everybody?
Thank you. Good morning. So as Joel said, I want to talk to you about how working with nature is a critical solution to solving climate change, but how regreening the planet can not just be one of the largest opportunities we have for addressing the climate challenge, but can also be a commercial opportunity as well. So I've worked in sustainability, I've worked addressing climate change for my entire career, most of that in the private sector. Indeed, 10 years I was at the BP, as BP built its alternative energy business. And so I spent a lot of my time working on energy. I've also spent a lot of time working on ag tech, and increasingly now looking at the forestry sector as sort of how do we actually scale solutions. So the first point I would make is back when I started in the early 2000s working on renewables, nobody predicted the 100x growth that we've seen in terms of renewable deployment. People hoped for it, people dreamed it, but nobody believed that that was possible with the cost of where renewables were today and with where policy was. And what I want to posit today is that we are on the cusp of creating that same future of how we can work with the forestry sector, with the agriculture sector, and many other sectors that are dependent on it to unlock that same rapid growth and that same commercial opportunity that came from renewables that we've seen over the last 10, 20 years. So where does this story begin? It begins with our oldest climate technology, the tree. The tree has evolved over 350 million years. That's 100 million years before dinosaurs even roamed the earth. And it's evolved to be this perfect carbon capture and storage machine. It sucks in CO2, it produces oxygen, and it also produces a dizzying array, or trees produce a dizzying array of products that we take for granted in every aspect of our life, whether it's paper and timber, whether it's fruits and nuts, whether it's rubber. Trees produce a broad and dizzying array of products that we take for granted. But trees were also one of the first organisms that understood collective action, because when trees come together in a forest, they also provide a whole range of free ecosystem services that we also take for granted every day. They clean our air, they clean the water. And what I want to focus on today is the incredible power they have as a major carbon storage solution. There will simply never be a better carbon capture and storage technology. So science tells us we can't get to less than 2 degrees without nature. Nature is about land use is about 25% of our emissions, but the land sector also offers one of the few opportunities we have not to just reduce emissions, but to also start sequestering and pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. Trees, forests, soils are actually the best negative emission technology, as the new term, that we have. And the science tells us that there's an enormous opportunity to get after that if we can just figure out what the right business models are to deploy that at some kind of scale. So this map just shows us globally some new data that we've been working on that shows us where those opportunities are, and there are opportunities in almost every country to get more forest planted while still ensuring there is more than adequate land for food production to feed a 9 or 10 billion person population by the middle of the century. So this is land that was formerly forested, and it's a huge opportunity around the world. So storing carbon in nature is not a new idea. People have talked about it for many, many years, and we've understood it for decades. So what's important is not just saying trees can capture carbon, but actually starting to reframe the debate. So for so long, it's been framed as a conservation story. Environmental organizations like my own, like great organizations like Conservation International, who are outside, have enormous programs working to conserve critical areas of wilderness and habitat around the world. And don't get me wrong, that remains a key strategy for many, many reasons beyond climate. But what we have to do is start telling a business story of where are the opportunities to actually unlock the potential. Forests are represented in the Paris Agreement. Many governments are starting to make commitments, but what we haven't seen yet is how that gets turned into the business potential to move things forward. So we start with the forestry sector. The forestry sector is part of the solution, but for so long the forestry sector has been at loggerheads with the environment sector around how forests are managed. But we don't get to plant billions of new trees without engaging the forestry sector and creating an opportunity for the forestry sector to deploy carbon capture and storage at a vast scale around the world. So how do we create new partnerships with the forestry sector? Because if we do that, we think we can add billions of dollars to how the forestry sector works and operates and employ many, many more people. Now, this is also a social story about how we engage rural communities in the places in which we work. But it's not just a story that should capture the imagination of the forestry sector. It's also a story that can unlock opportunity in many, many of the sectors represented here today that rely on land use for so much of their products. So the building sector, the construction companies, and how we use wood in buildings. The food and drink industry, which is already taking action to take deforestation out of their supply chains. The reforestation opportunity offers an opportunity to put more carbon or to capture carbon as part of Scope 3 emissions. And similarly, the energy sector, the fossil fuel energy sector, and other heavy emitters, there is simply no pathway to carbon neutrality without unlocking the enormous potential of biosequestration and using trees and forests to capture more carbon. Cities and municipalities and water utilities also have an enormous opportunity because we know planting trees in watersheds is one of the most cost-effective means of cleaning up water that we rely on for drinking every day. And so now we've just produced a report that shows more than 3,000 cities worldwide could replant forest, could restore and protect forests in the upstream watersheds of cities and produce real positive economic benefits that are going to deliver so many broader co-benefits than simply using grey infrastructure to try and clean up our water. So there's many, many opportunities that we have to think about how we use trees. So where are some of those opportunities? Well, as I said, they're everywhere. I was just out in West Virginia, literally a few weeks before the election, and the beautiful Appalachian Mountains, just a 3-hour drive from Washington, where you've got communities that are now suffering a Great Depression because of the decline of the coal industry. And believe you me, when you speak to those communities, most of them are fully aware that coal is not coming back. But what they're looking for and striving for is who can offer them hope and who can create opportunities for how they can create new jobs. So we're starting to create a plan of how you can start to restore an area, 2 million acres just in the central Appalachians of degraded mine land that can be restored back into forest, can help clean the water, can provide amenities and recreation opportunities and hunting opportunities for those communities, employ tens of thousands of people, and capture more than 2 million tons a year of CO2. So we've got scalable carbon capture solutions right on our doorstep that will also be socially inclusive, because we don't achieve any of our sustainability goals if we continue to leave people behind. So this solution is also a way of how we can connect with rural communities that for too long have felt left behind by all the great advances we're making in sustainability elsewhere. That's not just a story that connects in the United States and in the rest of the developed world, it's also a story in many emerging countries around the world. So the other example I'd give is working in Brazil, the home of the cocoa tree. That's where it came from originally. So we're now working with communities who've lived on degraded forest land. This used to be Amazon pure rainforest, and that ain't coming back, but we can create agroforestry projects where we're planting cacao and we're planting other trees like acai that provide an income for communities and give them more economic opportunity to develop than what they have right now with just a few cows running around on that land. And it will capture millions of tons of CO2. The last example I would give you is how do we use wood in our buildings? Okay, it's slightly counterintuitive for an environmental organization to talk about chopping down trees to use it. But if we use wood in buildings, something that's already commonplace for residential builds across the US, we have an enormous opportunity to capture a lot more carbon. This is a tower, there's skyscrapers being designed around the world with new innovation in building technologies called cross-laminate timber that capture enormous amounts of carbon during the growing of the tree. But if you imagine you're then displacing concrete and steel, these buildings have an enormous carbon footprint reduction compared to a conventional steel and concrete skyscraper. So there's huge opportunity for us to start thinking about and reimagining how we build in the future and how we create a new age of timber. So I want you all to just imagine a future where we are replanting billions of trees in watersheds in our cities, in degraded lands across the world, and engaging many sectors of business, but also engaging governments to create the right enlightened policy that can push this forward. A carbon price would be great, but we can do things without carbon prices. And we could imagine a world in 10 or 20 years where trees are starting to be planted across the world and we're starting to unlock a multi-billion ton carbon solution. If we dream that together, we can create that future exactly the same as we saw with renewables over the last 10 or 15 years. And the power is with business to come together with civil society and come together with government to create that future. I would invite all of you to think how you can join us and many others to start to dream that future. Thank you very much.